Following a year of record heat and drought, this year's UN Climate Summit will feature a contentious set of issues for countries working to find common ground. Here are the key issues in the two-week COP28 negotiations starting on the 30th of November in Dubai. The main task at COP28 is a first-time assessment of countries' progress towards meeting the crucial goals of 2015 Paris Agreement. The 2015 goal is an effort to limit global temperature well below 2 degrees Celsius while aiming for 1.5 degrees Celsius. With global efforts lagging, countries will try during this global stocktake to agree on a plan to get the world on track to meet climate goals. The plan could include urgent steps towards cutting CO2 emissions for boosting green technology. Investments are also expected. Countries are at odds over whether this exercise should put the onus on all countries or just the world's wealthiest countries to do more. Now, historically, wealthy nations release the most planet-warming emissions. Countries are expected to update their national emissions cutting targets and plans by 2025. The toughest talks at COP28 may focus on the future role of fossil fuels and whether countries should commit to start phasing out the use of CO2-emitting coal, oil and gas. Countries agreed at COP26 to phase down the use of coal, but they've never agreed to quit all fossil fuels, the main source of planet-warming emissions. The United States, the EU and many climate-vulnerable nations are insisting on a final COP28 deal that commits countries to phase out fossil fuels. But the Group of 20, it failed to agree on the point at their summit in July. And countries, including Russia, have said that they would oppose a fossil fuel phase-out. UAE and other nations whose economies are dependent on fossil fuels want to include a focus on technologies designed to capture and store CO2 emissions underground. The International Energy Agency says these emissions abatement technologies are crucial for meeting climate goals. However, they're also expensive and not currently used on a large scale. That will require some work. The EU and others worry they will be used to justify continued fossil fuel use. Countries will consider setting goals to triple renewable energy capacity and to double energy savings by 2030. The proposal has been made by the European Union, United States and the UAE's COP28 presidency. This looks set to win broad support, with G20 major economies, including China, already backing the renewables goal. But the EU and some climate-vulnerable countries insist on pairing this pledge to boost renewables with phasing out fossil fuels, setting up a clash. Tackling climate change and its consequences will take an astonishing amount of investment, far more than the world has budgeted so far. As per UN, developing countries will need at least $200 billion every year by 2030 to adapt to worsening climate impact like coastal sea rise or storms. Additionally, they will need funding to help replace polluting energy with clean sources. There are also the costs of damage already being caused by climate disasters. At COP28, countries will be tasked with setting up a loss and damage fund to help with this, which developing nations say should unlock at least $100 billion by 2030. Now, these enormous price tags make the UN climate talks tense, to say the least. Vulnerable nations want more money spent on adapting to a world that is sure to become warmer over the next few decades. They want wealthy nations whose past CO2 emissions largely cause climate change to pay up. The EU and the United States have said that they will put money in the climate damage fund at COP28, but they also talk about the need for private finance to help. Wealthy countries also face pressure to prove they have met an overdue climate funding pledge to provide $100 billion per year to developing countries. Outside of the official UN negotiations, governments and companies will be making their own announcements. The UAE plans to launch a voluntary pledge from oil and gas companies to cut emissions in a bid to bring the fossil fuel industry into the climate fight. Other initiatives set to be announced include pledges to curb emissions of methane, limit emissions from air conditioning, and restrict private finance for coal plants. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.